everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome. I just want to mention that we're finishing up the series on Faces of Addiction today by working on the family and addiction. And then next week, hopefully, with the grace of God, we'll start the series on the iceberg theory. So basically, you can find the schedule, all the activities, everything on the website. You can check it out. I want to start off today. I picked a reading from the language of letting go. It's from October 20th, and it's on detaching with love. Sometimes people we love do things we don't like or approve of. We react. They react. Before long, we're all reacting to each other, and the problem escalates. When do we detach? When we're hooked into a reaction of anger, fear, guilt, or shame. When we get hooked into a power play, an attempt to control or force others to do something they don't want to do. When the way we're reacting isn't helping the other person, we're solving the problem. When the way we're reacting definitely is hurting us. Often it's time to detach when detachment appears to be the least likely or possible thing to do. The first step towards detachment is understanding that reacting and controlling never help. The next step is getting peaceful, getting centered, and restoring our balance. Take a walk, leave the room, go to a meeting, take a long hot bath, call a friend, call on God, breathe deeply, find peace. From that place of peace and centering will emerge an answer and a solution. Today, I will surrender and trust that the answer is near. I wanted to share that with you because I wanted to kind of put together in this last lecture in this series, talking about the family and addiction. I wanted to put this together because it kind of brings everything that we've talked about over the weeks and connects all the dots together. Because I really believe that the family is tremendously influenced by the aspect of addiction. And yet sometimes the family is the last group to know. And as a result, then very many times they're in the middle of a lot of the activity and stuff to this effect. But the denial pattern very many times is very strong. And sometimes, you've heard the term the elephant in the living room. It's almost like you don't want to see what you see. And as a result, then you choose not to see it. I want to share this with you because I really believe very deeply that families are affected powerfully by addiction. So what I wanted to do is share a story with you. It's kind of an outline. And actually what I did was I put 3 stories together of different situations I work with, to kind of help you to understand the effect of addiction in the family. I want you to visualize, I want to just put this any place. It could be anywhere, and it can be with any addiction. But I want to primarily centralize on alcoholism. But really, in reality, this could be sex addiction, this could be gambling, this could be all the addictions we talked about. The aspect is that basically this is how people react and how they deal with these things. We have a family, typical family. We have a wife, a husband, and we have 3 beautiful children. Anyway, the oldest child is about 12 or 13 years old, and the other 2 are younger. So basically, the father, he works for this big company. He's got a good job, he makes good money, goes to work every day. Now again, I'm using the term of the father, but it could be the mother, it could be a family member, it could be a lot of different situations. I'm just putting this together to give you the concept and the idea. On his way home from work, normally with a bunch of guys, he stops off at a place, it's called a bar, has a couple of drinks, and usually heads home. His wife doesn't see this as a major problem because this is something a lot of people do. The only problem is, every so often, very interestingly, he doesn't make it to supper. And so when he gets home, he gets scolded and told, next time call me or let me know what's going on. And things seem to be pretty well in a normal setup. But then after a period of time, based on the progression of the disease, all of a sudden, he becomes later and later getting home. And after a period of time, he begins to miss supper. Now, his wife basically is starting to get angry now. She's getting very upset. Because again, she's told him over and over and over again that he should come straight home. But again, he doesn't. And every time he comes home, he knows that she's going to be waiting for him. And so therefore, he knows he's going to get a sermon when he gets home. But here's the crazy part about addiction and this kind of a scenario. He's gotten used to the sermon. She's gotten used to giving the sermon. This is starting to become a way of life. And after a while, she gets angrier, and then one day she decides to pick up the phone and call the bar and finds out that he's still there. And so the frustration builds up inside of her to such a point that one day she decides she's had enough and she heads for the bar. She walks into the bar like a little bit of a crazy lady and walks over to him and begins to scream, yell, and carry on. And he kind of sits there like, I don't know who she is. And basically, all of a sudden, then next thing you know, she's so angry. Now, I'm kind of making this, this whole scenario probably happened over a long period of time, but I'm accelerating it. She then proceeds to hit him. Next thing you know, basically, she ends up, they call the police. She ends up getting arrested. Now she's in jail. And of course, typical, what does she do? She allowed a phone call. So guess who she calls? She calls him. After all, she would do that for him. As far as he's concerned, he says, are you kidding me? I got a free night to drink, the heck with it. So as a result, then, he does what she probably should have done a long time ago. The crazy part about this insanity is that after a period of time, this guilt, this anger, this frustration is building up inside of her. And there's this thing when it comes to families. I just can't understand why he doesn't listen to me. I can't understand why he does this. After all, he's a grown man. He should be able to control himself. Why can't he be like other men? The point I want to bring out is that over time, addiction begins to affect the insides of the whole entire family. And the serious thing about it is they now begin to interact in a crazy way with each other. And reaction is beginning to take its toll. After a period of time, she becomes very embarrassed by him. And so as a result, she stops going to things with other individuals and other people because they're always asking about him, and she doesn't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to deal with it anymore. The other scary part about it is not only is it affecting her, it's affecting her entire life. It's almost like this lifestyle now is beginning to affect the children because they're picking up the anger, the rage, all the different things going on between the two of them. And the children get very insecure, very upset. It comes down to the point that all of her attention now is on the addict, is on the addiction. And the kids, after a while, start getting neglected. Next thing you know, another scary thing begins to happen. He starts coming home drunk at night. She's saw her time being so angry and frustrated that the kids, after a period of time, begin to have an effect on them. And the oldest child, who's now 13 years old, decides he's had enough of this thing going on between his parents. He decides, and this is scary, to take over taking care of the younger children. And so he learns after a while, Daddy's drunk. So he takes money out of Daddy's pocket to buy lunches for the kids the next day. And after a period of time, it's almost like he's assumed the responsibility of an adult. Now, how does all this come to a head? Well, we have the parent-teachers meeting where parents are invited to come and pick up the report cards of the kids. The 12-year-old goes to school and goes to visit his other siblings' teachers to get the report card. Now, the teachers think this is pretty strange. And eventually, through the school counselor and things to that effect, stuff now comes to a head. You know, what's scary about it is this 13-year-old has decided that the 13-year-old is now a 35-year-old. So 13-year-old has relented his childhood to take care of his siblings. And we see this over and over again when it comes to addiction. Because so many times we have a tendency to deny, to run away from what's really going on. Because again, it's because it's scary. I want to share one more story with you, and then I'll get into the concepts, how we connect the dots together. Well, one day this grandmother came in to see me, and she brought her 4-year-old child with her. Not her 4-year-old granddaughter, of course, not her child. So they came in to see me, and she was very concerned about her daughter, who had a drug problem and an alcohol problem. And they were sitting in the room when I was doing the intake with the grandmother, and a little girl was sitting next to her. And I watched the behaviors of the little girl. In the chair, she took her 2 fingers and she was tapping on the arm of the chair over and over as the grandmother was telling about her daughter. Finally, she said, and this is what scared me, almost like, now she's 4 years old, almost like she was like 20. She says, Grandma, let me tell the man about Mommy. You're not there. And then she proceeded to tell me how Mommy got sick and was on the floor, and she had to clean her vomit, and she had to take care of her and do all this stuff and everything else. This is a 4-year-old. And the way she's talking scared me half to death because she's taken on the role of an adult. I wanted to share these 2 stories with you because I want to be able to get into the process that goes on inside of families very many times when it comes to any form of addiction. And I want to connect it to the 3 categories that we talked about in phases of addiction. One of the things you have to try to understand is the first thing, and this is part of what people go through, the normal thing is to deny what's going on. And many times when it comes to those isolation addictions, a lot of people, this stuff is going on right under their nose. They have no idea at all what's going on. See, people could be into their addiction in very many different ways. We talked about that. We talked about different phases, different concepts. Functional addicts who show up for work every day. I don't see it as an addiction problem. But after a while, the behavior, the things behind it, they begin to happen. They begin to connect. Because all these addictions are progressive. And eventually, they're going to get worse. And so basically, we begin to experience this. And the crazy part about it is, a lot of situations we see ourselves in, we have no idea what's really going on. And so denial is very prevalent amongst family members. And especially when it comes to the aspect of the fantasy addictions, because so many times the addict has a tendency, because of the interaction with families, even though their life might be unmanageable, to go and blame the family to blame people that are close to them. And the scary part about many of us as family members, we take on the guilt, we take on the blame. We basically feel like if I only can figure this out and do better, that's where the caretaker thing comes in. Somehow I gotta fix this person, I gotta save this person, I gotta rescue this person. And so I go about, first of all, part of my denial process is I try to be logical. Now, good luck being logical with addiction. Now, a lot of people try to figure it out. I've seen families literally try to get books and things about addiction and try to figure out how to fix someone, how to save them, and going to all extremes to do it. Myself included, when I was living with that priest, when I was a young priest. Basically, my mind was, I was angry at him, frustrated with him, and basically I couldn't understand why he couldn't get it. Why doesn't he straighten out? Why doesn't he stop? And so many times in the course of the journey, we don't realize the progression of this powerful addiction. And again, no matter what the addiction happens to be, it's always in process of progressing. And we have a tendency very many times to want to fix it and want to stop it. We go through the different grieving process with it because change is taking place in our life. Our family system is deteriorating. And now all of a sudden we're beginning to experience different things. For example, we experience legal problems. Or all of a sudden people get in trouble. And we're trying to fix them and take care of them. We want to rescue them. You want to save them. You want to help them. I'll give you another good example of this. And it's an example of a mother and her son. And her son got in all kinds of trouble. So she spent an enormous amount of money getting attorneys, getting bail, getting him out of jail. And because she felt sorry for him, she brought him home. And 15 years later, he's still home. He's still not doing anything. He's still drinking. He's still caught up as an addiction. And then she calls up and she says, how do I get him out of the house now? Well, there's no simple solution to it. Because you might say something like, well, you can put him out on the street. And most mothers and most families will say, well, I can't do that. It's my child. My child. So we get caught up in the concept of enabling, of wanting to save, to want to fix. And we don't make people responsible for their behaviors. I've said many times when someone steals from you or manipulates you, does something that's illegal, you may have to press charges against them. But again, this defies all kinds of logic. How do you press charges against one of your own? Again, you feel guilty about doing that. And yet we know in our society today, you actually can press charges. Then you can take them to court, and if it's a first offense, they can go to drug and alcohol court. And basically they'll be sent to a rehab, or they give them the choice of rehab or jail. So there are different things that are available, but most of us don't know a lot about that. And that's why it takes us a long time to truly begin to get help, because one of the things people even get angry at Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, Families Anonymous. God, there's so many programs for family members. Adult Children of Alcoholics, Codependency Anonymous. The other night I had the wonderful experience of speaking at Families Anonymous, another beautiful 12-step program. Basically it's a concept of being able to realize the effect on families. And as a result, then we have to realize the fact, but even these programs, basically, so many times we go to them, why? Like I went to them. I didn't go to Al-Anon because I wanted to work on me. I went to Al-Anon looking for them to show me how to fix the addict. And that's a classic thing. Many of us do that. If you're an Al-Anon member, you know what I'm talking about. I come here because I want you to show me how to straighten him or her out. When in reality, I'm going to tell you at these particular meetings, the purpose of them is for you to work on you. You have to learn something which is really important. And only through therapy, through 12-step programs, through getting help and getting guidance and getting direction, can you begin to break the pattern. But again, one of the things is classic. You want me to work on me when I don't need any work. This other person does. Look what the person is doing to the family. Look what's happening financially to us. Everything's falling apart. And you want me to work on me? So as a result, then, so many times, my anger and my frustration, if I don't have an outlet to be able to deal with it, be able to work with it, and that's why I did the reading I did tonight, because we have to learn how to detach with love. See, it's not about spending my life being angry at the addict. And you're going to get angry, believe me, you are. I have to be able to realize the fact that all I can do is detach with love. Give the person to God. That entails me working my recovery program. It entails me taking care of myself as a person. It's me beginning to work the program the way it's supposed to be worked. So we learn detachment. A lady one time, I'll never forget, she learned detachment. Her husband came home drunk and he vomited on the living room floor. And the old days, she would have cleaned it up. But now they all went to bed and she left it there. The next day he came down and he said, "What's that?" She says, "I don't know, you left it there last night." The visual things of seeing things to this effect. So the concept is, I've seen all kinds of things in this direction, but it means that I love you and I care about you, but I'm not going to play the game with you anymore. I'm detaching. I want to take care of me. That sounds awful selfish, doesn't it? And yet in reality, it's not selfish. That's why in Al-Anon they use the term self-care, not selfishness. And it's hard to do. It's also hard to be able to make the addict responsible for their behavior. Because again, I understand because, went through this with my youngest stepdaughter. I still understand it. Before we actually finally did an intervention and got her into treatment, she totaled 3 of my cars. Very expensive proposition before, and I worked in the field of addiction. See, it's very easy for me, sitting back here giving the talk, to talk about the aspects of it. But when you're in the process and you're in the emotional concept of it, it's not so easy, believe me. Because the addict very many times can say this and you know it. "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." And promise they won't do it again. And the crazy part about it is, when they say that, they truly mean it. But the disease takes over. And then it happens again and again and again. I've seen people go through relapse 15, 20 times. Because basically each time it was going to be different. We see this with gamblers and other types of people. All I have to do is keep playing and eventually I'm going to win. I'll take care of it. I'll work it out. But again, what do? Put myself in all kinds of jeopardy. And the scary thing about this process is that we literally, we can get so caught up in it. And the other part of it is, because I want to connect the dots on this now, so many times the behavior of the addict and the behavior of the family member becomes very similar behavior. And I'll show you what I mean. I lived with the alcoholic pastor. I saw him drunk. I was so angry at him And then he was so angry at me and told me I was a bum. I have to work better in the parish. I don't know what I'm doing. Leave it alone. Don't do this. We used to fight like crazy. And I used to call him names. And I did it out of ignorance and out of reaction. And that's the hardest part of recovery, is not to react. To be able to understand the disease and to understand that it is a disease. And so many of us don't want to face the fact that it's a disease. It's so much easier, we think anyway, to make believe it's not. So we get caught up in that concept of fixing, willpower, control power. If only you listen to me and do what I tell you to do, everything will be okay. And that's where families have to be educated about addiction. They have to be able to learn about it. They have to be able to realize the fact that it's something they can't fix, they can't control. And that's why sometimes interventions are necessary. And sometimes you have to be able to realize the fact that you got to be able to look at the person as a human being and be able to learn detachment. What's so powerful about that process also is that even for the addict, is operating out of the addiction. And they need somebody to take this shame, this guilt away from them. So if they can dump it on you and you're going to take it, then I feel better. So blaming is a big part of it, back and forth. And you blaming them and going back and forth with it over and over and over again. I remember some nights being so frustrated with my pastor that I would go to my rooms and I'd scream. And then I became just like the addict. I began to drink alcohol in the secrecy of my room at night because I couldn't take the stress and the anxiety. And so the next thing you know, I'm using the same substance I'm mad about to make sure I'm able to go to sleep at nighttime, to turn this stuff off, to let it go. And I used it as an excuse, and I blamed him that it was his fault because of the way he acted all the time. I needed something to help me out. And so basically, I went into my addiction, but I didn't see it as an addiction until later on when I had the nervous breakdown. And so it's just interesting how this process of life, and so many times even families will get to a point where they say, I can't take it anymore, so therefore I'm just going to join them. And I've seen people fight with their husbands at bars, their boyfriends, their girlfriends, and then end up sitting next to them at the bar. Well, might as well just join them and be with them and be as sick as they are. Maybe we can just be two sickies in a relationship together. That's scary. And yet, it can happen so easily. Because I know it happened to me. I got angry at Al-Anon. I kept going because I figured I was going to break them down eventually and get them to see my point. Here we go with the control stuff again, the logical stuff again. And that is the hardest thing when I'm dealing with addiction a lot of times, to try to get through to people, because everybody wants to logically have answers to this. Give me an answer. You can't answer an addiction. The hardest thing is to be able to come to an acceptance of it and be able to sort through the behavior and begin to realize the value of taking care of ourselves and working on ourselves. You see, to me, addiction is this powerful, powerful process that people go through. And the scary part about it is it can really affect you to a point where you'll begin to lose it yourself. And that's the sadness of it. Again, people always want me to explain addiction to them. I can explain behavior. The disease, it's like trying to explain cancer. We're trying to explain a lot of other diseases and things that we have. And yet so many people do not want to see it, any kind of addiction as a disease, as a compulsion, because they don't want to see it. We live in a strange world, you know? Even when it comes to different situations. For example, if you ask somebody, and one of our counselors used to say this to me, and I kind of got a kick out of it. He used to say, because he was a recovering addict himself, he used to say, when addicts are in their addiction, they'll spend $2,000 and $3,000 a week on their compulsion, whatever it happens to be. They get into recovery, and you tell them each session is $60. Their back pocket, their zipper goes automatically on their back pocket, and they don't want it. And never forget, I had this gentleman come in who was sent to us by the courts, and he was mandated to 60 sessions of therapy. And he came in, he had gold rings on, he had big necklaces around his neck, everything, the real classic. He came in, and I said to him, well, you're mandated to 60 sessions, I said, and it'll be $60 a session for each session. What do you mean $60? He said, you mean it's not free? I said, no, you have your responsibility. He said, hell with that crap, I ain't paying those $60 to come and talk to you. You know, I said, well, I'll tell you what, you go tell the judge that, you know, and then you come back and let me know. But it's scary. Because again, for the drug, which is my obsession, I'll mortgage everything to survive. When it comes to my recovery, I find myself not wanting to go in a certain direction with it. I want to control that too. I want to share this with you today because I truly believe that addiction is a powerful process. We have to understand the process, be able to get help and get guidance and get direction. And I'm going to tell you, I've learned for some people, it opens up a lot of our feelings, a lot of things going on inside of us, and we have to be able to process our feelings. You might need therapy to be able to get you through because some of us have gone through major trauma as a result of this. Some of the trauma may go back to another family member, go back to members of your family. You know, I share, we lost 6 people in our family to addiction. I'll never forget, and this is typical of addiction, you know, my cousin's husband, God rest his soul, you know, my cousin used to say to me she says, Vince, I got to talk to you about something. I said, what? She said, I think maybe my husband might have a slight drinking problem. I said, I hate telling you this, I said, but your husband has been the topic of conversation in our family for the past 5 years. And I even said to her, don't you think it's strange that the local police department brings your husband home at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning? I don't think they run taxi service. And I said, didn't you find it funny when you went outside to get the morning paper and your husband was asleep on the front step? Look around the neighborhood and see how many husbands are sleeping on the front step. Even with all these signs and all these things and everything else, she had a real hard time with it. He finally died from cirrhosis of the liver. And then she said to all of us, he didn't really die from drinking, he died from a heart attack. She created something else. And I understand all that, I really do. Because there's a stigma involved in this. I don't want people to know what's going on in my family, even though the behavior people do know. And so I guess what I wanted to share with you is that we've covered a lot of things about addiction over the past 5 weeks. And I really want you to begin to understand the value of it. You know, if you missed any of the talks, eventually they all go on to Vince's Corner. You can connect them and watch them there. But always remember, this is a powerful process, addiction. And it can affect each and every one of us. And that's why I wanted you to see the different faces of addiction. addiction. And that it's not just one thing. And the bottom line is, it is obsessive compulsive behavior. It's scary. Because again, not only does it affect us, it affects people around us, and it can even infect the whole entire community and family. So my prayer tonight is that we spend the time, open our hearts and minds to learn more about addiction, and be able to maybe attend some of these 12-step meetings, Al-Anon, Naranon, Families Anonymous, ACOA, CODA, all these different programs that are available for people to help people understand addiction a lot better. And so let's ask God to bless us and guide us as we continue the journey of our work together. Let us pray. God, we come before you in prayer. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your direction. Humbly and beautifully, take the time to allow us to look at the things we have to be able to be open to learn and grow from all situations in our life. Realize that you are our guide, you are our strength, and you are our hope. And with you, all things are possible. So we ask you, please, to be our strength, our guidance. Help us to open our hearts, open our minds, to be able to share the gift of life, the gift of who we are, with all those in recovery. So we pray and we ask the God of understanding to guide us and be with us on this journey called life.